Hey everyone, it's John Lorden, and I'm back. I don't want to start this video without giving you guys at least some explanation of what happened this week, but just last week was a really tough week in terms of some family stuff. I did wind up losing an elderly family member. It wasn't exactly a surprise, but it still hit me a little harder than I was expecting. Many of you are very perceptive out there. I was starting to get questions about, hey, John, what's going on? I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate you guys that were reaching out on Twitter. And as you can see, I tried to spend as much time as I could still being connected to you guys there. I also needed a little downtime because there's this whole other aspect of YouTube which doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but it's a bit like running a business, and I'm getting ready to do my taxes, and that has now turned into a whole different thing than it used to be. It's much more complicated now, so needed a little downtime just to kind of get my head straight again and also get everything lined up so the channel could continue being healthy and moving forward. So sorry I didn't really have a chance to give you guys a heads up on that. I'm usually very good about trying to let you know when I'm going to be out, but that is essentially what happened. It was just a combination of a lot of different things, and when I'm starting to feel like that, I know that, okay, time to back off a little bit and just take a day or two and recover and rest up and move forward. So here we are. Today's case on Searchlight it's a bit tough because in a lot of cases I hear the theory that someone is being trafficked, and I really hate being cynical about that, but it just comes up so much in these cases, and I do understand why. It's because it's a potential outcome where the missing loved one is still alive and able to come home at some point and come out of the situation that they're in. This case is one of the first ones that I've looked into where I feel like being trafficked might be my first explanation for what's going on here, my primary theory in terms of what's going on here. So with all that being said, let's take a look at the case of Chelsea Cobo, and we can see a picture of Chelsea here with her young son. Unfortunately, she went missing when he was only 10 months old. Let's start with NamUs to get the basics on the case. Chelsea Michelle Cobo. The date that she was last seen is May 6th, 2016. I am seeing some reports that she actually went missing on May 7th, but she was 22 years old when she went missing. She is now 24 years old. She is white, Hispanic, Latino, female. For her height, they have her at about 5'2" to 5'3", and her weight 150 to 170 pounds. She went missing in Brooklyn, New York. She was last seen leaving restaurant/club La Floridita in Sunset Park with an unidentified man. Now, this is another one of those cases where there's a lot of different information that's floating out there. That is actually not the same description of where she was last seen according to some of the news stories that we're going to look into as well. I did look into this restaurant just in terms of its location and where she was known to be that day. Certainly possible that she was there at some point. And even the case of it being an unidentified man, we're going to get some explanation about who that possibly could be. So just keep that in mind. Quite honestly, the circumstances here probably need to be updated. For physical, we have her hair color at brown. It's brown on top to the middle, and then she does have blonde tips. You can even see it here a little bit where it looks like there is a little bit of blonde coming through when it gets close to the end. Her eyes are brown. It does say that she has a lazy eye, strabismus, I believe is the proper term for that. Just means that her eye occasionally does not track correctly with her right eye. For tattoos, she has one on her left front hip. It says she flies with her own wings. For piercings, we have the nose, left nostril, and usually she wears a small stud in the nose, and her ears are also pierced, including the cartilage higher up on her ear. Great teeth, wide smile. She has thick hair. In terms of skeletal information, which we don't always see filled out here, it does say that she has slightly rolled shoulders. So I would imagine that they're slightly rolling forward is probably what that means. For clothing description, last seen wearing a Yankees jacket with blue chest and gray sleeves. Under that was a black hoodie, sweat jacket, and a black blouse. Gray sweatpants with a white accent stripe. For her footwear, she was wearing Uggs, and the color of them was chestnut. She is known to wear a silver chain with a silver Italian horn, and also a ring, silver ring with a cross that's on it sideways, Roman Catholic cross. For eyewear, black framed prescription glasses. We can see them in the photo here. And for accessories, black Coach small over-the-shoulder bag, and she might have some other cloth bags that she's carrying as well. No transportation method to talk about in this case. She basically goes missing on foot. For dental information, they do have that charted. For DNA information, they do have that as well. We're going to hear a little bit more about the DNA collection process around this case by the end of the video today. No fingerprint information available. Typically, I don't know if this is 100%, but when I'm looking into these cases, most of the time, if they don't have any type of criminal record, they don't have fingerprint information available. There are some other organizations that are working on that, trying to get fingerprints, particularly of children when they're young, just in case they go missing. But here we see the same picture they're using in the profile. And this picture actually shows at least the location. I know it's not a great photo, but I believe that's the location of the tattoo, the writing that is on her left hip. So let's jump into the news on this. And this is one of those stories where there is a drug element that happens in this story. And quite frequently when I'm looking into stories like this, you will see that there's some coverage that happens, but then as the details of the story start to be known, it's like a bunch of the media companies just back off of it because they're like, oh, no, this is a drug user. I really don't know what the motivation is, why they won't cover cases like this. I've talked about it on videos before. 1 in 10 people is struggling with some type of addiction. If your family or your loved ones exceeds the number 10, there's a good chance that you're dealing with this in your personal life as well, or that you don't know about it, but someone among your group of loved ones is struggling with some type of addiction as well. So I don't think we should give up on people simply because they might be using drugs. But here at News 12 Brooklyn, let's get one of the earlier descriptions of what was going on in this case. Rose Cobo says her daughter, 22-year-old Chelsea Cobo, has been missing since May 6th. Cobo says her daughter called her to tell her she was going out for dinner, but never came back. Police say Chelsea checked herself out of St. John Riverside Hospital earlier that same day, and many details into the investigation are puzzling. They say she was last seen near 68th Street and Bay Parkway in Brooklyn. So there we get a different last seen. That is not the same location where the restaurant is, at least according to the maps that I ran on this case. And the hospital that they mentioned here, St. John Riverside Hospital, is actually way far away from this neighborhood where both this street and this restaurant are. Like it's over, I think, an hour's drive to get to that hospital. So very interesting details going on in this case. And also considering why would her mother just kind of be okay with, oh, you're going out for dinner tonight? You just checked yourself out of a hospital for rehab or for some other issue? Okay, yeah, go have a nice dinner. I'll see you later tonight. It feels weird right off the start. Moving to another article also at News 12 Brooklyn. Here is a picture of her mother. Chelsea disappeared on May 7th, 2016. So now we get a different date after checking into Lutheran Medical Center for drug rehab. So now we're hearing a different medical center and that she's checking in, not checking herself out. Quote, last time I saw her, I kissed her and I hugged her and I gave her the coat off my back because it was a Friday rainy afternoon, Cobo says. I told her I loved her. She called me and said, I'm coming home after dinner, but she never came home. Once again, not a whole lot of detail, but thankfully, Pix11.com has coverage on this case as well. And I just want to call out Mary Murphy. This is an article from July 13th, 2016. Mary Murphy did a deep dive into this case. It is so important in these cases that someone cares enough to do this type of work when it comes to local media. And Mary was kind enough to do that. From what I understand, she also did a video segment on this and released it on Pix11 at Facebook. That video went viral, was seen by over 100,000 people. Really amazing work. But outside of that, Mary also typed up this story, which I always appreciate when the information is released. I mean, go ahead and hit Facebook. I understand what a strong social network that is. But some people don't live in the Facebook world, and we just completely miss that stuff. Thankfully, Mary also wrote up this article and includes a lot of excellent details about this case. Quite honestly, I don't think I would have nearly the understanding of this case if it wasn't for this particular article. So we're going to lean on this article pretty heavily, but with a very big thank you to Mary for really diving in and caring about this case enough to do this. Chelsea Cobo's baby son was gleefully playing clap hands and holding up one finger as he celebrated his first birthday this week at home in Borough Park, Brooklyn. Baby Christopher grabbed the string on a birthday balloon and rocked back and forth, but his 22-year-old mother was nowhere to be found. Quote, "I've put out over 12,000 flyers offering $10,000 in cash," said Rose Cobo through tears. Cobo raised Chelsea as her own daughter since Chelsea was 13 months old. So first hint that we're getting here that Rose is actually her adopted mother, but it's even deeper than that. Rose is actually Chelsea's biological aunt. Chelsea's parents both struggled with mental illness. Now, once again, I've already kind of told you guys that this is a case that is involving some type of drug use. When you're talking about someone that could potentially be struggling with mental illness, there's always a chance that they could turn to self-medicating to try to get away from feeling the way that they're feeling or with the struggles that they're dealing with. And this certainly looks like a case that we might have that happening in. Not long after Chelsea's biological mother died of kidney failure in March, Chelsea started suffering from depression. The young mom checked into the psychiatric ward at Coney Island Hospital. She spent 2 weeks there and became friendly with a female roommate. The roommate had a frequent male visitor named Justice. Not long after, Chelsea, a one-time homebody, started going out with the hospital roommate and Justice. After one outing, Chelsea came home in the early hours of Tuesday, April 26th. Quote, "She was out of it. She was unresponsive," Rose Cobo recalled, saying she took Chelsea to the hospital. She noticed bruises on Chelsea's arm and thought the young woman might have been raped. A drug test was also performed. Quote, "That was the first time in her life that she had an opiate in her system," Cobo said. "She was drugged, robbed, and raped that night." Chelsea Cobo said she didn't remember who she was with that night or what had happened. And then on May 6th, the day that she disappears, Chelsea said she wanted to get help. She wanted to go to rehab. I think it's important to understand the flow of what's going on here. And I know earlier it makes it sound like, possibly someone could have slipped her some type of drug or something along those lines. But it's very clear that within a really short time, you're talking from April 26th to May 6th, Chelsea decides that she wants to go to rehab. And I would also say that I'm not sure that Rose is being accurate about this is the first time that Chelsea had an opiate in her system. I don't think that someone goes from April 26th being the first time they're partying to, literally 2.5 weeks later and saying, I need to be in rehab. There was likely some history that might have been going on before this, but we don't have a whole lot of detail on that. Rose dropped Chelsea off at Lutheran Medical Center in Brooklyn. A van was supposed to take Chelsea to St. John's Riverside in Yonkers. So finally, we get some reasonable explanation here about why we're having two medical centers that are being brought up here. Essentially, she was being checked in at one and she was going to be transported to the other. Like I mentioned, St. John's Riverside is over an hour's drive away from where she was living. It took hours to get to Yonkers, and during that time, Chelsea Cobo was apparently texting her friends and asking them to pick her up in Yonkers. Not completely unheard of in cases like this. People say, I want to go to rehab. They freak out on the drive there, try to get out of it, get to the hospital, do check themselves out, kind of like the earlier theory we were hearing in this case. It totally happens. It's a struggle that these people are going through. Moments of clarity with moments of anger and despair and confusion. So I totally get this. I'm only doing this so I can get methadone, said one Facebook message attributed to Chelsea. At one point, her female friend from Coney Island Hospital had written, "Listen, my boy got dope. Let's pick you up. We got everything." Rose Cobo said Chelsea's friend Justice claimed he picked Chelsea up in Yonkers on May 6th and brought her back to Brooklyn, dropping her off on 68th Street in Sunset Park. So there's that last known sighting that we get at 68th Street. And the way this is written, it seems to me that Justice is not an unknown or unidentified male. Rose is saying that that's what Justice claimed. That tells me someone has interviewed Justice. I don't know if it was Rose. I don't know if it was the police, but someone has got in touch with this guy because he has clearly given them information about where he last saw her. Some people reported seeing Chelsea leaving the Floridita restaurant on 5th Avenue in Sunset Park with a man named Antonio. Antonio and Justice are friends. Chelsea's mother hired a private investigator, former NYPD captain Sean Crowley. What's interesting here is, yes, the way this is written, I would assume that her being dropped off at 68th Street happened first, and then later people are saying that they saw her at the Floridita restaurant with this Antonio person, but we're not really getting time frames here, so I can't be 100% on that. What are the odds that she's going to be dropped off at one location and then meet up with someone else at a different location, and those two guys happen to be friends? And especially in an area like New York, there's a lot of people out there. It seems like there's something else going on here. Was she potentially meeting up with him, maybe to score some dope of some kind or to run something for Justice or something? It's way too far beyond coincidental. There seems to be something else going on here. Unfortunately, we also don't know, does she have any history with this Antonio guy at all? We just know that she met Justice, only a couple weeks before. Actually, I did see some news articles, and I'm not sure when her 2-week stay at the mental hospital was. It might be that she has known them for a couple of months at this point. So it just seems to me that she has fallen into this circle of not the best of friends within a few months, and things are moving very rapidly. Back to the private investigator. Crowley said he spoke to people in Coney Island who said they spotted Chelsea Cobo there in the last 2 weeks around the areas of West 16th Street, West 5th Street, Mermaid Avenue, and Surf Avenue. Quote, "We had spoken to a prostitute who works down in that area who had identified her from a photo we had shown her." Crowley told Pix 11 he also heard Chelsea Cobo was seen with a man named Vladimir. All the information I received was of her being a very caring mother, a very loving mother to her son, Crowley said. And we believe to some degree if she's on these opiates, then she's being controlled by others. We truly need the viewers, your viewers, to track her down. Like I said, now we have a private investigator, and just looking at the conditions of this story and keeping in mind some of the conversations that I've had with many of you, with Destiny Rescue, just about the mechanisms when it comes to trafficking, it's highly likely that there has to be some control mechanism to make this whole trafficking thing work. So if they were providing her with drugs and then making her do something for those drugs, that's how they could kind of keep her in this trap. And it doesn't seem coincidental to me that this is a woman that Justice met while she was in a sensitive position, being in a mental institution for 2 weeks to try to deal with depression from her mother passing away. These are the times where if you do have it in you to reach for something else and to have it try to help your life. These are the types of events that you'll see in someone's life before they start getting into some type of narcotic abuse here. And it's not always street drugs. It could be prescribed prescriptions as well. So that's why this is one of the few cases where I'm really looking at this, and we also have a private investigator that's basically agreeing here. This does look like potentially a trafficking situation. We know that the two guys are connected. We know that she's seen with both of those guys that night. And moving to nydailynews.com, very heartbreaking picture of her adopted mother here. Rose Cobo has given the city her missing daughter's DNA, but she prays she'll never get a call confirming authorities have found a match. I hope I never get a call from the morgue that they found her, Rose Cobo said. I'm still hoping to see my daughter again, to have her home and start the healing process. All of these stories always have a silver lining, and for this story, this is the little bit of a silver lining. This is a pretty interesting program that is going on in New York, and I hope a lot of other cities look at this and start implementing this as well. In 2014, the city medical examiner started a Missing Persons Day event, typically scheduled in May, where families are offered free services and can provide photos, DNA, and other info to authorities. DNA has led authorities to identify 50 missing people each year by matching their samples to human remains. This article really doesn't mention it, but I've seen other articles specifically about this, and this program also works together with our good friend NamUs. This information is collected by these medical examiners' offices and then entered into the NamUs system where those DNA matches can potentially happen. But admittedly, you've got her mother, Rose, coming to an event like this, knowing that the focus of this event is to have that DNA so that if her remains have been found and they're currently unidentified, there's some mechanism to figure out that that's actually Chelsea. So kind of a heartbreaking thing, but I'm really happy that this type of program exists. Rose Cobo fears Chelsea may be held against her will and has been relentless in searching for her, handing out tens of thousands of flyers, showing up at NYPD community meetings, and crashing police masses. She's hired a private investigator and runs a Facebook page and a GoFundMe.com page seeking help. Quote, there's only a couple options. She's being held by one person in captivity. The other option is she's dead and we need to find the body, she said. It's more than a nightmare. It's an unfathomable horror. I haven't had a decent night's sleep in 2 years. And that's the really sad thing about this. Her son's second birthday has now come and gone. He still doesn't know where his mother is. But Rose, I know she's seeing it really in a very simple way here because she's really worried that she's dead and that they're trying to find the body. But there is another one, which is that she's not necessarily being held by one person in captivity. The mechanism when it comes to this trafficking thing isn't always one person that's necessarily controlling. It can be as little as one person, but sometimes it's people that are working together. Sometimes there's a lot more organization about it going on there. And some of it really depends on the fact that the person that's being controlled doesn't necessarily have to be kept in captivity, at least physical captivity per se. They're being controlled emotionally or through some other mechanism, but they feel like they're free. And that's part of what makes some of this so tough. They don't necessarily recognize that they're being controlled in that way. So it could be that she is out there. She might be working streets. We have no idea at this point. Another thing about this case that's really tough is we don't have the basic questions of a missing persons case being answered here. We don't know if she's using cell phone, credit card, any of that kind of stuff. At least with the news that I was able to review on this, I didn't get a clear understanding of any of that. The timeline for the day that she disappears, we have a little bit of a feeling, but it's not the most solid thing in terms of timelines that I've seen on these missing persons cases. So it's really tough. Here is the website Help Find Chelsea Cobo. A bunch of photos of her here, and they have all the critical statistics. 23, I think she's 24 now, if I remember right from NamUs. 5'3", brown hair with lighter ends, brown eyes, several pictures. They have links to most of the main articles that are going on here. Video segments featuring her son. A lot to check out here if you're interested in this case. On top of that, in the links below, I will have the Facebook group that is being run by her mother, and also a link to the GoFundMe. And on behalf of myself and my amazing Patreon and PayPal supporters, we are going to be donating to this GoFundMe just as soon as I'm done filming this today. To hopefully help raise money, keep that private investigator on the job, make sure they have money for flyers. I believe that this is a case that is solvable. I think that there is maybe not a happy outcome, but a reasonable outcome that can happen in this case, where Chelsea might be able to be brought back and to reintegrate into her life in a meaningful way. It's clear to me that her mother desperately wants her back. It's clear to me that her mother would probably do anything to help her deal with whatever she's facing. I mean, she was already at least given some resources in terms of being able to go to a hospital where she felt like she was really struggling with depression. And when she felt like she needed to go to rehab, they were lining that up as well. So it's obvious that her mother has, the capability of at least putting her in the right types of programs to try to help her deal with this stuff. But ultimately, I personally feel right now it comes down to Chelsea. It comes down to, can she get her head clear enough to try to see her way out of where she is and to try to realize that there is a pretty amazing life that she has left behind in this son of hers. A lot of memories and beautiful moments that she's completely missing out on because she's struggling and dealing with things in a bit of a way that's removing her. It's really taking her out of life in a strange way. And that's kind of the toughest thing. You know, I've dealt with some addiction issues that are similar to this within my own family. And it's hard to get people to understand that you're not being yourself. You're not seeing the world in a clear way. You're using these things to escape something. And I understand that if you don't have the proper help there, that you might need that escape. What I wonder in this particular situation is why Chelsea felt like she might need to escape, despite the fact that she was getting some reasonable help along the way there. But admittedly, she's dealing with a lot of tough things with the loss of her mother, with being adopted by an aunt. There's already a lot of framework there, knowing that her parents were suffering with mental illness. There's just so much that she's already dealing with. But there is a way out. There is a way to get it all cleared up. And there is a little boy that's waiting for Chelsea at home. And I really, of all the cases I cover, you know, sometimes they feel like there's no way that they could be solved. Sometimes it feels like, yes, they can be solved, but the person's no longer still alive. This case for me actually has quite a bit of hope. We have some recent sightings. It seems like the people that are the known players in this case are known by the authorities in some way. We've got a private investigator who seems like he has good experience. This case seems like it has all the right pieces. It might just need a little extra nudge. And that's why I wanted to do a video on it. And I'm including the contact information for Crime Stoppers in the description box below. If you have seen Chelsea, if you see her out there somewhere, please get that info in as soon as possible so they can try to act on it. That's probably going to be the toughest aspect of this case is if she is moving around, if she isn't living in a stable place, you're going to have this chain of sightings. And by the time that authorities might be responding to that sighting, it could be a day or two old. It might not be very strong in terms of actually tracking her down. So you might be the mystery piece out there, you that's watching this video right now. And if you do have that info, please get it into the authorities so they can act on it. Thank you so much, everyone. If you have friends that live in this area, please share this video with them. There's a lot of people in New York. I know that there's a lot of posters out there, but it doesn't mean that everyone out there knows about this case. And I think the more eyes that we can get on Chelsea, the better in terms of chances of her being spotted and that info getting to authorities quick enough to act on it. And I'm sincerely hoping that that's what happens in this case. I'd really love for this one to have a good outcome. Thank you for spending some time with me here on this episode of Searchlight. I will see you back on the Lord and Arts channel with the new Itchy Mysteries tomorrow. Take care.